my family, my older brother is in the money business. He's a certified financial planner, and he's worked for various banks and that. So I knew a bit about what the money game was.
Wow.
And, you know, the different things that were being said and how one thing was being told to one person and something totally different was being told to another. And supposedly they were talking about the same thing in two different meetings.
Yeah.
For example, what would they be talking about, Rusty?
Well, the financial end of what was going on at the credit union.
Okay.
And Larry had no idea that I had any idea what financial things meant.
And you're pretty sharp about knowing when to talk and when not to talk to.
Well, I try.
No, you are. I've been around you enough to know that.
I stick my foot in my mouth sometimes when I really shouldn't, or open it way too wide when it should be shut.
But I want to make something very clear also, Rusty, before you. I want to make it very clear to the audience that Rusty is not a gay, not homosexual at all.
Yeah. You know, I'm straight. I got a girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, there are some wonderful gay people. There are wonderful gay or straight people too. And it's just I take people as they are, you know, whatever their faults may be. I don't judge them. It's not my place to judge them.
Sure.
But you know, I'm a photographer. I'm basically the wallflower. I see everything.
Now,
very little escapes me.
Up to this point, Rusty, what was Larry King having you do? Just as you said, hang around and look like a pretty boy, or were you actually photographing?
Supposedly, I was going to work for him as a waiter. He did a lot of catering, and he had a new restaurant and jazz. There was a jazz nightclub called Princess Palace after his son, Prince. And I was to be a waiter. Well, I spent very little time there working as a waiter.
Yeah.
And, you know, needless to say, I had very little income, but I had almost anything anyone's heart could desire was brought to me, basically. And the finest hotels, the nicest limousines, jet planes, you name it. Expensive clothes. He spent $4,800 on clothes on me one morning.
Jeez.
Because he thought that I looked like I walked out of a Goodwill.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you know, I'm a neat dresser usually, and you know, I dress for the occasion. If I'm going to be getting dirty, I wear dirty clothes. Old clothes don't matter. But I've got a tuxedo. I can dress up nice as the next guy, and get on the red carpet if I need to. But you know, it's just amazing. Most people would never, ever in their wildest dreams be able to imagine this stuff.
Well, what then, Rusty, was going on as when King flew you all around and, you know, kind of showed you off? What were you doing? Just there looking pretty, or did you understand what he was doing?
No. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What were you doing, and what was going on during this initial phase when you just first started to work with Larry King?
Well, we were going around. He was doing fundraisers and things like that. You know, $5,000 a plate. You know, suppers and things like that. And I was there to take pictures of these parties.
Okay.
Okay. Well, lo and behold, afterwards he was having another party with a few select people, and this was a sex party.
Now, were you aware of it at the time?
Not until later on.
Wow.
You know, it was into it a few weeks before I started getting the indoctrinated, basically, into this.
Yeah.
And, you know, he had it all scheduled out, basically, how he brought a person in. And the steps that he went through to get them indoctrinated, basically, and are initiated into what they were doing. And it was one of those things where by the time I figured out what was going on, I was into it to the point to where I knew I had to protect myself somehow.
Yeah.
And that's where I went in, and I would take pictures from the hip. That's where I'd keep my camera down by my hip.
Oh, okay.
And I'd disconnect the flash cord.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd usually drop in, I'd keep a spare roll of high-speed film. And I'd drop that in and go ahead and start shooting that way and get pictures of some of the people and who they were with.
Yeah.
And a little bit of what they were doing. So it wouldn't be so bizarre, because that's where the way Larry always said it, was that if something goes down, nobody will ever believe you if anything's ever said to them about what's going on.
Meaning the people that were there and their
Yeah.
position in government and society.
So they were so prominent?
Senators.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know, there was one night where there was a presidential limousine,
Oh.
and the Secret Service had swept the place beforehand,
Yep.
and they'd kept it secured for a couple days. And, you know, that's what went on.
Was that the first party or the second party?
It stayed for the second.
Okay.
Wow.
So, you know, it was one of those things where these people, they, you know, even to this day, people think that I'm full of it by
Yeah.
relating to them some of the things that have went on. And, you know, I was, to the point to where I realized what was going on. I knew that if I was just to go to somebody and say that, you know, this is what's happening,
Sure.
they would basically squash me, because I'd watched Robert Wadman, he's the chief of police in Omaha at that time,
Right.
take a stack of $100 bills, probably 1.5 to 2 inches thick, or possibly even thicker, which I figured would be about $50,000. And this, from what I understood, was a weekly payment that he received from Larry King.
A week.
For what? For basically keeping things hushed up in Omaha. He would have no problems with any of his things that were going on.
Yeah.
And Wadman would go to the second parties a lot. And, you know, he would get in on a lot of things that a police chief shouldn't be partaking in.
Or
There's second parties in Omaha and in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, yeah, and New York, and there's various places around. Larry King, he had, to give you an idea of how much pull this man had, he sang the national anthem to open the National Republican Convention in 1984 and again in 1988. And he had, I believe it was 84, wasn't it, when he rented the ranch that South Fork or Dallas,
yeah, that's right,
the TV show,
yeah, that's
and
right.
flew people over there
Yeah.
To have a great big party out there. And if I remember right, John DeCamp actually got to go to that party, and he said it was just the most lavish thing he'd ever said or seen. And,
Rusty, on these the second parties at night, was it strictly homosexual with young boys, or was it young boys and young girls?
It was predominantly men with boys.
Is that right?
But it didn't stop at that. He had both, you know, whatever anybody's tastes were, he would cater to them. And, you know, it was an eye-opening experience.
How many boys would be at these second parties?
It depended on where the party was. It might just be a handful. There might be a dozen. You know, it depended on what was going on.
Yeah.
And you know, it was